I woke suddenly in the dark. I sat up on my cot trying to locate myself, even though I could make out the white of my interrogator's sock, hanging to dry in the faint sounds of my parents sleeping by the stove. I felt dislocated, far away. I went to the window where I urinated in a canning jar, the nightscape of Pyongyang beyond black. In housing block after housing block, not even a candle shone. When the jar warmed in my hand, I screwed on the lid. People were right to be sleeping. They still had 2 more hours until the shop work whistles blew at 5. Still, I put on my damn smock and headed for work. With the power down for the night, the subway wasn't running, and the Kwangbok 3 express buses sat idle at their stops. I took Tongol Street through the Podangan, the hills of Mansu Park, black against the blue-black sky. On Cholima, I passed a Juche youth brigade of about 30 girls with their heavy boots and party slogans written in black markers across their foreheads. They had soot on their faces from an all-night bonfire rally in Mansudae Square. That wild, flickering light was still in their eyes. At work, I realized how far behind I'd fallen in my workload. The longest open case was a military nurse from Hanjong, accused of flirting with an ROK officer across the DMZ. It was said she'd given him pinky waves and even blew kisses hard enough to float over the minefields. It was the easiest case on the board, really, which is why I kept putting it off. Her location was marked as the down cell, and I realized I'd left her in there for 3 days. She was dehydrated when I found her, and the light was devastating. "I'm so glad to see you," she said, wincing. "I'm really ready to talk now." I took her to an interrogation bay and warmed up the autopilot. "I am ready to denounce," she said. "There were many bad citizens who attempted to corrupt me, and I can name all of them." The nurse was wearing a medical gown, and I ran my hands along her torso to ensure she was harboring no objects or jewelry that would interfere with the autopilot. Even the metal button could redirect the electricity enough to force a redo. "Is this what you want?" she asked. My hand was feeling around the hollow of her stomach. "What?" "I'm ready to mend my relationship with my country," she said. "I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to show my good citizenship." Is this thing working?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. She lifted her gown so that it rose above her hips, and the dark frost of her pubic hair was unmistakable. I was aware of the construction of a woman's body, of its major functions, and yet I didn't feel in control again until she was in her restraints and I'd hooked up all the electrodes. Then I was no longer concerned of her. Her relationship was now with the autopilot. Her body retched and relaxed as the autopilot initiated itself and began a series of diagnostic shocks. There was always that involuntary gasp, that full body tense when the first electrical licks are administered. Then the machine got to work with its thrum. The nurse's eyes focused far away. I ran my hand along her arm and her collarbones. I could feel the charge moving through her. It entered me, making the hair stand on the back of my hand. The autopilot is a hands-free piece of wizardry. It's not some brutal application like the other guys' torture devices. The autopilot works in concert with the mind, measuring brain output, responding to alpha waves. Every consciousness has an electrical signature, and the autopilot's algorithm learns to read that script. Think of its probing as a conversation with the mind. Imagine it in a dance with identity. Picture a pencil and an eraser engaged in a beautiful dance across the page. The pencil's tip bursts with expression, filling the page with erasure, while the eraser measures, takes note. Follow in the pencil's footsteps, leaving only blankness in its wake. The pencil's next seizure of scribbles is perhaps more intense, but shorter lived. They continue in lockstep this way, the self and the state coming closer to one another until finally the pencil and the eraser are one, moving in sympathy. The line disappearing even as it's laid down, the words unwritten before the letters are formed, and finally there is only white. The electricity often gives our male subjects tremendous erections, so I'm not convinced it's such a bad experience. I I looked at the empty blue chair next to me. To catch up, I'd have to start doing 2 at a time. But back to my nurse. She was in a deep cycle now. The convulsions had hiked her gown, and I hesitated before pulling it down. Before me was her secret nest. I leaned over and inhaled deep, breathing the ozone that rose from her. Then I loosened her restraints and turned out the light. Okay, thanks.